Greater Memphis Media. TSD TV, Tri-State Defender.
And the revolution will be televised. Welcome, and it's welcome home to the Brian Clay Chronicles on the Greater Memphis Media Television Network. It's been a while. We've been battling coronavirus, and some of you that know me know that I've had my own health challenges, but we are back. So our team has decided to make some vignettes of programs that we did last year and that we're bringing to you now. As you know, the Brian Clay Chronicles will premiere in November, a few weeks before turkey time. So we want you to sit back, relax, make sure you catch us on Facebook. You can go to the Greater Memphis Media page that we've created, or you can catch us on YouTube, the Greater Memphis Media YouTube channel, on where you catch a lot of your podcast and social media commentary. Our first program is the one that I've been looking forward to presenting for a long time. Superstar, London Lamar, state representative, one of the blazing young lions that we have here in Memphis. We got into a lot of different things, from racial justice, removing statues. But one of the things that we really got into was the loss of her child, Dallas, and how women's health is so important here in the 21st century. So sit back, relax, and watch this publication or production of London Lamar and Brian Clay.
Shooting, including whether her civil rights were violated. Tonight, many civil rights leaders say the decision not to bring charges for Breonna Taylor's death.
To come into Seattle, 75 have been deployed to Seattle tonight. The other 125 will arrive in the city tomorrow.
Black, white, blue, green, orange, that's out. A death is a death.
All the young cats out there, and even the older ones, older than me, it's a lot more life to live out here, man.
And welcome back to COVID-19 and the African American community, recapturing our soulful colors. And with me is my dear friend. You know what? She looks like she could be a Mrs. Clay, right?
I can be a Mrs.
You could be a Mrs.
I could be an MRS.
You ready to be an MRS?
Hey, look, this not about me. This is about COVID.
My good friend, London Lamar, State Representative, District 91.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
You're looking great.
Thank you so much. You know, I've been on my quarantine fitness.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is. You know, when they're saying it's those who aren't keeping themselves healthy that this COVID virus is really infecting. So this really is a wake-up call for me to start getting my personal, physical, mental, and emotional health together.
Well, you've always been a fit person, though, right? Campaigning makes that.
I have years. They go up and down.
London, when the protests happened, you were the first person I thought about because there was so many young people and millennials and when I think of millennials, I always think of you because I really consider you probably the most well-trained, and you're a millennial with big vision. You've been at this thing for a minute. But when everything went down, what was your first feeling?
When everything went down,
With Floyd.
With Floyd, absolutely. First and foremost, what happened to George Floyd was one of the most egregious things we've ever seen on live shot on camera phone. A man died, literally died on camera with the officer's knee in his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
And it looked like he even kind of gave him a little extra.
Absolutely, because what we do know is the officer knew who George Floyd was.
And yeah, they knew each other. Yeah.
So there was also some intent there, we could assume. But what I understood was the protests were so necessary. It was so necessary in a time where, quite frankly, it's just not getting better for our community. And at some point, when communities of people have asked for things so long peacefully and they don't see anything happen, what you see next will always be civil disobedience. And so what you are seeing is the results of tiredness and people asking for change so long after so long after so long and being frustrated.
So you weren't surprised at all when you
Absolutely not. That's what we should have done.
You're right, right.
If not worse.
If not worse.
If not worse.
If not worse.
But let's not fret. It was a call to action.
It was a call to action.
These protests aren't a call. They are the start of a call to action. And it's important that we hear that and come together and start building a strategy.
London, let me ask you, one of the things that this docuseries is attempting to do is to show how public health and the protests are interrelated.
Absolutely.
One of the things, I think it was not even a week after Floyd passed, you went absolutely ham in Nashville. I didn't even know, and I've known you, we've done this dance together for a long time. I've never even seen that side. Explain to the people in Memphis why it was so important to get those statues and busts and your arguments that you made.
Thank you. That's a great question, because that was one of the most...
Because it seemed so spontaneous.
It was spontaneous. Let me tell you, it was one of those moments where I truly felt God take the wheel and say to me in my ear, baby girl, say how you feel.
Right.
So what happened was that day, that was my third time coming back to that committee to present their bill because I was having so much trouble. So, you know, if they would have voted on this bill previously, I wouldn't even have the opportunity to even talk about it. But it's because I was getting bullied about this bill and landed on the day.
Yeah, that day was very different. And I have a special place in my heart for you. When you ran for committee woman, and I could go on, but nobody's gonna tell me anything about London Lamar. I love me some London Lamar. And we're gonna talk about that in detail, about your future. So I can say this with great authority as a political commentator. I know you well, and you got a little hood in you. You got a little hood in you, but that was so different. It was so spontaneous. Tell the people of Memphis about that day that may not know what we're talking about.
So I have a piece of legislation that will erase Nathan Bedford Forrest Day as a state holiday.
Right.
We in Tennessee have to recognize he has a state holiday, which, if I'm not mistaken, was July 13th. So for me, that was the third time I was standing in front of this committee to present this bill. That same day, in that moment that I was in that committee ready to argue my bill, I was the third person to have a Nathan Bedford Forrest related bill. Two of my other Democratic black colleagues.
Jesse had one too, right?
Not Jesse, it was Rick Staples out of Knoxville and Harold Love out of Nashville who had similar bills. But mine was specifically about the day, so I was third. But in that moment, I saw Rick come up and debate his bill about the bust, and I heard, and let me tell you something. Black women and black men, we operate differently in how we politic and how we want to communicate and respect people's views.
Interesting.
So on that day, my brothers were up there and they were having very deep conversations about the significance of Nathan Bedford Forrest. Your perspective, my Republican colleagues who won for it versus their perspectives who was for it. And they was doing, I respect you, my brother, all of that. And that was cool, that was fine. But in that moment, that day, at that time, as we're talking about Nathan Bedford Forrest, which is the symbolism of racism in the state, given his background as the first Grand Wizard of the KKK, a slave trader who sold slaves on the auction block in downtown Memphis, Tennessee, and also a man who led the Fort Pillow Massacre, which killed over 200 black Union soldiers. He was a treasonist. So you're trying to tell me he is the symbolism of racism in Tennessee, and led an organization whose history is about mass murdering black people. And so when you're talking about Nathan Bedford Forrest and want us to overlook the wrong and see the positive of him and why I can't respectfully do that at the same time we are burying George Floyd. That day, at that time, they were having George's Floyd funeral. And I, in my right, as a black woman, who wants to be a mother, cannot sit here and say that I respectfully respect your views of why you want to keep a bus or a state holiday of a slave trader and a racist. I was standing in the back of that room for an hour and 30 minutes in high heel shoes, listening to my colleagues debate why they respectfully agree and don't agree about racism. During the exact moment George Floyd is being held, has his funeral being held because he died because of racism. You cannot tell me that if I look back on that day, I would not stand on that stand and say enough is enough. I was pissed. I was like pissed.
But somewhere in that, you went somewhere else.
I closed my talk. I always come to committee with my research, my talking points. I'm very particular about how I present myself and my information. But that day I said, this ain't about forget this script. Y'all obviously debated for the last hour and 30 minutes why Nathan Bedford Forrest is a bad person, You're either going to vote for racism or you're not. Walking up to that stand, something in my body said, I am not about to get up here and be. Experience. It was an out of body experience. I was not going to walk on that committee stand and be eloquent that day. Because for the last hour and 30 minutes, two legislators were trying to be eloquent with you and you still didn't vote for it. So let me try something a little different. And let me bring my realness. Let me bring what George Floyd means to the black community on this stand. So as you're memorializing him in Houston, Texas, I'm going to take this moment to memorialize your life in this committee room as we fight against overt, covert, and systematic racism. Not today. I said I was not going to sell my people out short.
We're going to get into a lot of things because this is London Lamar.
You getting the real.
Yeah, we're going to open it up.
Yes, you getting the real.
Family. Security. Happiness. They had it all. A good life. Then, one day, the unexpected happened. And just like that, everything changed. Things spiraled downhill quickly. Suddenly, their lives were falling apart. They were facing the unknown. I'm attorney Ursula Woods. Call us at the bankruptcy law firm before it's too late. We can help you get back on track and give you the second chance that you deserve.
Whether you're planning for a comfortable retirement preparing for her big day, or saving for graduation day.
I know it's a lot, but what do you think?
We can help with that.
Preserver Partners, preparing for your future today.
I have noticed something about this particular class in Nashville. One of my first internships in London was actually working for Dan Bird as an intern when John Ford and that whole group was there, Lois and Catherine Bowers and all of that. And it seems, from an outsider looking in, it seems that this group, you, Jesse, Ackberry, Karen Camper, G.A. Hardaway, Larry Miller, it seems like you all are a little bit more aggressive this year. It seems like where in the past there could have been criticisms, right, maybe rightfully so, but you all are working more as a unit. Do you think it was the Floyd, the Breonna Taylor, the Rashad Brooks murders that kicked that off, or was that just is it a natural love that you all have for each other that's making you all work together?
I don't even think it's neither. I really think that, you address the different classes of the different groups of people that's moved through influence in the legislature. And I think what is important to recognize is that all of them had a purpose to open doors so that when we come in, we can make it a little bit better as we go along. So Lois and the Fords and the Bowers of the world did things so that your legislators that are here now can continue to do the work and continue to advance the agenda of the Black community and the Memphis community. That is why it's working effectively. And I think as well, we are also understanding what we do have at stake. This is 2020 and this isn't years ago when they were there. Things are a little bit different, and we do have the ability. They have to be different, even though we're in a super minority now, which they necessarily weren't. Because the legislature had the majority then.
We had the majority.
Y'all had the majority then. And that's a whole nother conversation about what could have been right, what could have been wrong. But what I do know now is we understand what's at stake for our community, and we have an obligation, even in the minorities, to get things done. And I think at the end of the day, we always overlook the minute things in order for what is best for our community in general. And I think that is very important as legislators. We all have our own agenda about what we want to, accomplish for our communities. We all have different types of communities with different needs. We all have different ambitions. But at the same time, when it comes to moments like this, when we're in the midst of a pandemic, we're in the midst of one of the most critical civil rights moments for racial justice in my generation's history, that we can't come together, that is blasphemy for Black people to elect us and think that we can't get on the same page as your state representatives. How dare we not? And I will be embarrassed if you thought anything other than what you said today, that we didn't have our stuff together. And that is the type of legislator I am. And that's the type of legislators I expect to come to Nashville. And those are the type of legislators I expect the community to elect.
The day our son was diagnosed with cancer, we didn't know what to do.
You have the really nice people and you have a really nice place, but then you have that one big struggle that you're going through.
The question we're always wondering about is, what if it comes back? Or what if she has complications from her therapy as she gets older? Should we really be considering this clinical trial? Is it really going to help him?
When the doctor was telling me I had cancer, I didn't know how to act in front of my mom. I didn't know how to handle this news.
When it comes to pediatric cancer, There are always more questions than answers. We can face pediatric cancer together.
Hi, Jim Downey. Hi, good to meet you. Hi, Jim. So Savannah, how old are you again?
I am 6.
6 years old. So
I have
first,
a wiggly tooth.
As a parent who has just been given the news that your child has cancer, we see the Together site as an important tool that will help you through the journey that you face. When you go home with that diagnosis of cancer, then you're facing the decisions that are going to alter your child's life and your life. Why can't there be a site, an authoritative site that gives you everything you need to make the right decisions?
from diagnosis to finishing treatment to the next steps to long-term follow-up, information for you, information for you, information for you.
Your questions go beyond treatments and trials. Together, we'll offer resources and support for your day-to-day life.
As the father of a pediatric cancer patient, I know that when you or someone you love is facing cancer, you find strength in information and hope. That's what this website, this resource, this community called Together is all about.
One of the things that I admired, and I can also relate to, is that you have been a very public person. And we've kind of, on a personal note, I've traveled that with you. The way you have responded, after, Dallas did not make it, was just absolutely amazing. You bounced back very quickly, and you took a very painful part of your life and made it an issue. Do you mind talking about that just a little bit?
Sure, and I'm blessed to be at a place where I can talk about those things and be of inspiration to other women. But that whole process was very challenging. My first year ended up at the end of session, finding out that I was having a kid, and ended up being in a situation where I wasn't married. It wasn't something that I planned that happened. Things happen. Life happens. Just like many of the women in my family and everybody else's family, sometimes things just happen. And I decided to roll with it. You don't always get to choose what plate is put in front of you. Sometimes you just got to eat what's on your plate. And so I decided to make it the best opportunity as possible. And so when the tragedy for me happened, on top of leading up to that, where so many people in the political circle were judging me, were talking about me, were casting bad judgments, and then the thing happened when he did make it, he did die. Now all of a sudden you want to feel bad for me, and then many people expect me not to bounce back. Don't get me wrong, most people don't bounce back. No. And I've had moments where I thought I was dying, suffering in silence, truly having to deal with, a lot of emotional and mental health trauma issues from that whole situation, on top of the embarrassment and the shame and the having to bring myself physically back into shape as well without having him here. And the financial impact of having all of those things, you still got doctor bills, you still have these things to pay for. But what it did was, that day that he died, I felt like I died too, but I also had the chance to be reborn. And I decided in this new chance, a second chance at life, because as tragic as it was, I don't have children. And I now can rethink whatever I want to do with my life. And that's a gift in a tragedy. You always have to find a gift in a tragedy. And I decided to look for the gift. And I decided not to live and be sad all the time, but I have something to live for. I have, I may not have him, but I have 65,000 other people that I have the ability to be their mother in the legislature. And so I also have the opportunity now that when I talk about these reproductive health issues in the legislature, they aren't just cute talking points for me so I can get a Planned Parenthood endorsement. This is my life that I'm talking about. And these are the lives of my cousin and the other women who've died or been near death from the experience of maternal health issues in childbirth. And so when we talk about being in a pro-life state like Tennessee, where they're forcing women to have children through egregious abortion laws, then I can stand up in that saying, in that podium and say, no, women do die from pregnancy. And if it's not a good decision for them, then maybe would they need abortion access so they can live too. And also to talk about the disadvantages, like, implicit bias when it comes to doctors and all those things. And people think, like, how did this happen to you? You're a state rep. Well, I'm Black, though.
Amen.
So Black women are oftentimes overlooked when it comes to our health issues. And we have to do something about that. And it's just kind of ignited this fire in me to become a better legislator. But it taught me how to be a better woman. I finally, you go through things in life that takes you from being a young woman to a real woman. And I feel like that's kind of what happened to me. And I've kind of owned how God wanted my stories to be written. And I've decided to read that chapter and own it and say it proudly. And, and I decided to, at that moment, feel like I've lost a lot. So at this point, I have something to continue to live for, and I'm going to hold people to that. And so now I really feel like going forth, going into 30 this year, that, these women that I felt, intimidated by, who were mean to me, it's like, at this point, I'm kind of like, screw you. God's taking everything from me, but I'm still standing and getting things done.
This is London Lamar, State Representative, District 91, took over for the great Lois D. Berry. And this has been an interesting day, an interesting series. The COVID-19 pandemic and the protests caused a firestorm in this country that we have never seen in my lifetime, or probably even your lifetime. So what is the answer? We don't know. But you've heard from the best. It's time for the African American community to step up and take our rightful place in this country. We will see you later on the Brian Clay Chronicles. And if I haven't said it, have a good day, have a good tomorrow, and see you next time when we talk about issues for today's urban intellectual. Pow. And thank you so much for joining us on that particular interview. It was as you see, it was a powerful interview. And Greater Memphis Media will be doing so much this year. We're bringing online the iVision Project magazine, which is going to be a little bit different, not as political. We're going to be talking with people like Bishop Brandon Porter. Thank you. Brandon Porter and various musicians in the community. Our new president, Dr. Vernell Fairs at Lemoyne Owen. And it's going to be a wonderful document that you can enjoy at your home. Lemoyne Owen Radio, something that we're going to be, that you just tune in. And it's something that we are working hard on. And there'll just be so much. Obviously, the scholarships, the celebration of literacy throughout this community. So if anybody asks, how you doing? You tell them the Black community is rising. Greater Memphis Media. Intelligent information and ideas for today's urban intellectual.